You know how sometimes you see an image, maybe a shape or like a pattern, and it just clicks.
Oh, absolutely.
It feels really meaningful, powerful, almost like it's saying something vital, but, not with words you can easily pin down.
Yeah, there's definitely a language operating there. Sort of beneath the surface of our conscious thoughts, it taps into something deeper, more intuitive.
Right. It kind of bypasses the logical brain, goes straight for the emotions, the instincts.
Exactly.
And that feeling is really the jumping off point for our deep dive today. We're going to explore this whole fascinating idea looking through the lens of the secret language of symbols, a visual key to symbols and their meanings by David Fontana.
It's a really great book. It takes you on this journey, doesn't it? Through
Mm.
history, across cultures, showing just how central symbols are to, well, to being human.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission here is not just to, look at symbols, but to try and unpack the power they seem to hold. Why do they resonate so much?
And how do they actually shape our world, maybe even ourselves, in ways we don't always realize?
We'll be looking everywhere. Ancient rituals, myths, um, the natural world, obviously, and even inside our own minds.
So the big question, really, that's guiding us is, what is this secret language? And how does it fundamentally influence how we see and understand, well, everything?
Okay, so let's start with the basics. What is a symbol in this context? Fontana makes it clear they're not just, pictures or arbitrary signs.
Right, not just labels.
No, think of them more like visual keys. They unlock these layers of meaning that are incredibly difficult, sometimes maybe impossible, to really get across fully with just words.
So they aren't just pointing to meaning, they're the meaning just compressed, like a kind of visual shorthand for really complex ideas.
That's a good way to put it. And the source argues pretty strongly that symbols make up something like a universal language, that they carry this power, evoke similar deep feelings across huge gaps in culture and time.
Why do you think that is? What makes them potentially universal?
Well, the idea is they tap directly into our intuitive awareness, our emotional core. We're drawn to them because they feel true on a level deeper than just logic.
Yeah.
There's a fantastic quote the book uses from the Gospel of St. Philip, I think. Truth did not come into the world naked, but it came in types and images.
Ah, okay. So truth arrives clothed in symbols. That makes them pretty essential, not just decorative.
Exactly. They become the vehicles for these deeper realities.
And speaking of deep fundamental things within us,
Mm.
the source brings in the Jungian perspective, which seems like a really powerful way to understand why symbols hit home universally.
Yes, Carl Jung. He proposed that symbols are expressions of these dynamic creative forces that underlie existence itself, and he introduced the concept of archetypes.
Archetypes. Okay, so not like rigid personality types, but something else.
More like innate instinctive blueprints. They're within what he called the collective unconscious, shaping our understanding of what it even means to be human.
So like inherited patterns of thinking or feeling.
You could say that. Think of them as powerful bundles of psychic energy. They influence how we instinctively understand life, react to it, and they play a huge role in forming our personalities.
Okay.
And here's the really interesting part. These archetypes, they don't just sit passively in the unconscious. They can emerge, express themselves outwardly, and very often they take the form of symbols.
Ah, I see. So symbols are like the face the archetype shows the world, or maybe shows us, like in dreams.
Precisely. The book gives some classic examples like the anima and animus. The anima seen as the sort of female archetype within the male unconscious, influencing traits like sentimentality, tenderness,
And
perhaps.
the animus, the flip
Yeah.
side, the male archetype within the female unconscious. Manifesting more as, say, action, decisiveness. It's about those complementary energies we all seem to carry.
Right. And then there's the trickster archetype. The source describes this one as representing this restless, dynamic energy in our psychological life.
The agent of chaos.
Sometimes it's the force that questions assumptions, enjoys, disrupting the status quo. It can be chaotic, sure, but ultimately it pushes us towards self-knowledge by challenging how things are.
It's like that little voice that makes you ask why, or
Yeah.
take an unexpected path. Okay, so Jung points to these universal patterns, these archetypes, but the book also highlights, quite rightly, that the meaning of specific symbols can vary wildly between cultures. How do those two ideas fit together?
That's a really important point. Universality versus specificity. While the underlying energy or the archetypal theme might be shared across the globe, the specific symbol used to represent it and how a culture interprets it can be dramatically different.
Got an example?
Sure, think of the scarab beetle in ancient Egypt, hugely powerful symbol, rebirth, the sunrise, regeneration.
Right.
But in parts of China, apparently it was linked more with gluttony because of its habits. Or think about colors. White means mourning in some cultures, purity or weddings in others.
Wow, that's a complete flip. So it's less like a fixed universal dictionary, maybe more like a universal grammar that gets spoken in different local dialects.
That's a brilliant analogy, actually. Symbols reflect the lived, subjective experience of humanity. Cultures adapt them, layer meanings onto them based on their own environment, their history, their beliefs, who they interact with.
So the variation isn't a flaw, it's how the language stays alive.
Exactly. It keeps it relevant.
And symbols themselves aren't static, right? They change over time, too.
Oh, absolutely. They evolve as cultures meet, clash, merge. The book mentions how the Romans adopted Greek gods but gave them Roman names, slightly different vibes.
Sure, Zeus becomes Jupiter.
Right. Or how Buddhist symbols absorbed local Bon practices when Buddhism spread into Tibet. And sometimes symbols get sort of sanitized over time, simplified, maybe losing some original intensity as society changes or as new beliefs like Christianity absorb or replace older pagan symbols.
It's fascinating. They're like living things within the human story. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. We've talked about what symbols are, why they matter. Where do we actually find them? Let's look across different areas, starting way back with the earliest evidence we have.
Right. Prehistory. The earliest known symbols are just astonishingly old, over 30,000 years, found in Paleolithic cave paintings.
And it's not just pictures of animals, is it?
No, you get those incredibly realistic animal depictions, but also these abstract geometric shapes, quadrangles, spirals, dots, things like that.
And the really striking thing the book points out is the continuity.
Exactly. The fact that some of these abstract shapes stuck around for like 20,000 years across huge geographical areas, I mean, that just screams significance, doesn't it?
It has to mean they were deeply important.
We can only speculate on the meaning, of course. Was it hunting magic, marking sacred spots, maybe trying to map the cosmos somehow? But their sheer persistence suggests symbols were absolutely fundamental right from the start.
They weren't just drawing stuff, they were drawing meaning. And fast forward quite a bit, symbols are obviously central to ritual, magic, prayer, across pretty much all cultures.
Yeah, rites are so important for community identity, for marking life's transitions. They're often these symbolic, physical enactments of an inner journey, aren't they?
Like moving someone towards a new state.
Exactly. Maturity, maybe enlightenment, connection with the divine or the unconscious. Think about baptism, marriage rites, funerals. Like those incredibly elaborate ones in ancient Egypt, preparing the dead for the afterlife, all deeply symbolic processes.
And sacrifice. That often seems so brutal, but it's loaded with symbolism too.
Highly symbolic, often representing renewal or maybe trying to secure blessings. The Aztec human sacrifices, for instance, weren't just random violence in their view. It was tied into ensuring the cosmic order, specifically making sure the sun would rise each day. That ultimate daily renewal.
A profound symbolic act then.
And prayer itself is often steeped in symbolism. Physical postures, sequences of movements like in Islamic salat, or the gestures and arrangements in a Hindu puja.
It's about embodying the spiritual idea through the physical form. Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
One of the richest sources of symbols the book explores is, naturally, the natural world.
Which makes total sense, right? Nature just feels inherently meaningful to us. It's this inexhaustible source, often seen as reflecting divine energy or fundamental forces.
And ancient cultures often personified nature, didn't they? Like Earth Mother goddesses?
Yes, very common. And animals, well, animals are absolutely packed with symbolic weight.
Okay, there are loads in the book. Maybe we can pick out a couple that are really striking or show interesting contrasts.
Sure. Let's take the dragon. Such a powerful symbol, creative and destructive power. But look at the difference between East and West.
Right. In the West, it's often the fire-breathing monster guarding treasure, something for the hero to slay.
Exactly. But in the East, especially China, often a benevolent, wise creature, a bringer of rain, luck, fortune. Same core energy, immense power, but totally different cultural takes.
That's a perfect example of that cultural adaptation we talked about. What about the serpent? That one seems to carry a huge, maybe contradictory range of meanings.
The serpent is incredibly potent. And yes, ambivalent. It can symbolize totality. Cycles, think of the Ouroboros eating its own tail. Or fear and transformation, like Medusa's snake hair. Healing the rod of Asclepius with its single snake. Or dual forces like the entwined snakes on the caduceus staff.
It seems to represent shedding the old skin, rebirth, hidden power, ancient wisdom.
Mhm.
It embodies contradictions.
It really does. And the context matters hugely. Is it coiled, entwined, attacking? The specific form changes the meaning.
You mentioned the caduceus, the staff with two snakes. That's often used as a medical symbol today, isn't it? Though maybe mistakenly sometimes.
Yes, often confused with the rod of Asclepius, which only has one snake. The caduceus, with two, symbolizes that balance of opposing forces, originally associated more with Hermes or Mercury messengers, commerce. But you see, powerful symbol, its meaning can shift.
Little nuggets like that are fascinating.
Yeah.
But what about birds?
Birds often symbolize freedom, obviously, ascent, messages between realms, the soul taking flight. But again, specifics matter. The pelican, famously, symbolizes self-sacrificial love, feeding its young with its own blood, supposedly.
Right.
The eagle embodies power, vision, and even just feathers signify lightness, speed.
It's about the quality the creature embodies, or what people believed it embodied. And plants and trees. The tree seems huge.
Oh, the tree is arguably one of the most potent, most universal symbols we have. It embodies life itself. It connects the sky with its branches, the earth with its trunk, and the underworld or water with its roots. It's an axis mundi, a world axis uniting all the realms.
So mystery, transformation, rebirth, everything tied to growth and cycles.
Yes. And specific trees carry immense cultural weight. The oak, sacred to Celts and Norse gods. The tamarisk, linked to the Egyptian god Osiris. The hazel, associated with wisdom or magic.
And the tree of life?
Represents paradise, spiritual growth, the source of life. Then there's the tree of knowledge, embodying duality, the choice between good and evil.
And flowers. Roses for love.
Exactly. Flowers often symbolize beauty, vitality, maybe a locked paradise. The rose for love and life is enduring. Even herbs carry meaning, like rosemary for remembrance.
It's everywhere in the plant world. And the basic building blocks the elements: fire, water, air, earth.
Ancient traditions didn't just see them as substances, they were fundamental energetic forces. Alchemy, for example, used triangle symbols to represent them in its whole language of transformation.
So nature provides this incredibly rich symbolic vocabulary. What about symbols related more directly to us, the human body, our spiritual journeys?
The body itself is often a symbol. Many cultures see it as a microcosm, a reflection of the universe. Think of Leonardo's Vitruvian Man as the measure of all things, fitting into cosmic geometry.
Right.
Our life stages are often symbolized as a journey. And there's complex symbolism around things like nakedness versus clothing, depending on the context.
And sex and fertility seem deeply symbolic, going way beyond just biology.
Absolutely. The union of male and female energy is this profound symbol for the creative principle itself. Not just making babies, but the spiritual union of opposites needed for any creation.
Like the yoni and lingam symbols in Tantra.
Exactly, representing the sacred feminine and masculine energies coming together. And you have symbols of sheer fecundity: the hare, the frog, the egg, the cornucopia, horn of plenty, all representing regeneration, potential, abundance.
Then there are the objects we create, which take on huge symbolic power. Things like crowns or keys.
Yes, these objects stand for abstract concepts. A throne isn't just a fancy chair. It symbolizes monarchy, authority, maybe wisdom.
And a crown.
Represents perfection, maybe infinity with its circular shape, majesty. It can also symbolize the union of male and female power. The orb, often held with a scepter, symbolizes temporal and spiritual power, again, often seen as combining energies.
Keys seem powerful, too.
They're not just for doors. They symbolize holding office, power, having access to secrets or hidden knowledge. Think of Janus, the Roman two-faced god of beginnings and endings, holding keys, or keys held by the Pope, or linked to Osiris unlocking the underworld in Egypt.
A coat of arms isn't just a logo either. It's like condensed identity, honor, family history, and symbols.
Precisely. Even the tools of conflict have symbolic weight. War itself symbolizes destruction, imbalance. Peace is healing, fertility often shown by the dove and olive branch.
And weapons themselves.
Oh, yes. A sword can stand for justice, authority, truth. A bow and arrow, while Cupid uses them for love, but they can also symbolize divine light or focused energy. A dagger might represent phallic energy or sudden action.
Musical instruments, too. They seem to evoke powerful feelings.
They're often seen as tools to reach spiritual states, stimulate mystical experience. The lyre is linked to Orpheus, Apollo harmony, cosmic order. The harp with the Celtic god Dagda. A horn can announce something huge, the end of the world, or the approach of divinity or an enemy. They represent the power of sound itself.
And the structures we build, buildings, monuments, they feel symbolic too.
Definitely. Architecture often reflects our aspirations, our spiritual understanding. It frequently uses symbolic geometry. Christian churches, for instance, are often laid out to mirror the human body. A castle with its moat can symbolize spiritual refuge, inner defense. A bridge is a powerful symbol of transition, connection, overcoming division.
Stone circles.
They speak of ancient worship, maybe tracking cosmic cycles, connecting with ancestors. A temple represents that, striving for the sacred, achieving a holy space. Even simple things. A window is like consciousness looking out. A door is a threshold, a barrier, or an entry point. A tomb is a gateway to whatever comes next.
It's just incredible how humans have poured symbolic meaning into almost everything. Now, beyond these individual symbols, the book also discusses entire systems built around symbolic language.
Yes, over centuries, people have developed these complex systems, often kind of esoteric or spiritual, designed to explore hidden truths or reach certain goals, all using symbols as their language.
Okay, instead of trying to cover them all, could you maybe highlight one or two that really show how these systems work, how they use symbols to build a whole framework?
Sure. Let's think about alchemy and the Kabbalah. Alchemy. People often just think of trying to turn lead into actual gold.
Right, the failed chemistry experiment.
But symbolically, it's this incredibly profound system about inner spiritual transformation, taking the base metal of the ordinary, maybe flawed self, and through various symbolic processes like the union of the Red King and White Queen, refining it into spiritual gold.
So the chemical symbols are metaphors for psychological or spiritual changes.
Exactly. The outer work symbolized the inner work. Purification, enlightenment. Then you have the Kabbalah, which is an esoteric Jewish mystical tradition. It uses the tree of life, the Sephiroth, as its central symbolic structure.
I think I've seen diagrams of that. It looks like a network.
It is. It's a diagram with 10 interconnected nodes, or Sephiroth, representing divine attributes, or maybe stages of creation unfolding.
So the symbols there literally map out the structure of reality or divinity as they saw it.
Yes, it's used as a symbolic map. For meditation, for understanding the divine, for navigating the spiritual path. Every point, every connection has layers and layers of symbolic meaning. These systems aren't just lists of symbols, they create entire languages, entire maps of reality using symbolic forms.
And things like astrology or the tarot, which the book also mentions, feel kind of similar in that way, using symbolic frameworks, the planets, the cards to interpret life.
Precisely. Astrology uses the symbolic meanings assigned to planets and stars and their positions to understand influences on human life, on character. The tarot uses its deck, especially the major arcana cards, as the symbolic journey, representing archetypal experiences, psychological states, often used for divination, yes, but also for self-reflection. They're both systems trying to find meaning and pattern through symbolic language.
So given how ancient, how universal, how complex symbols are, how do they actually show up and work in our lives today? Are they still relevant?
Oh, absolutely. They continue to enrich our experience, often without us even consciously noticing. Think about art. Symbolism has always been a core part of art, conveying spiritual ideas, telling myths, expressing collective identity. Even in modern art, where symbols might seem more personal or abstract, artists are still tapping into that power to evoke feeling, to suggest meaning beyond the literal image. The Renaissance, of course, famously went back and used classical symbols everywhere.
And the book also talks about the really personal areas, meditation and dreaming.
Yes, there's this deep-rooted belief across many traditions that engaging with symbols, whether you're meditating on one or analyzing your dream images, is a way to connect with deeper layers of reality or with your own unconscious mind.
Dream interpretation relies heavily on symbols.
Hugely. Dream symbolism is often seen as the language of the unconscious, revealing insights, expressing those archetypal energies in a form we can actually access. Paying attention to recurring symbols in your dreams, like Jung suggested, can offer really profound self-knowledge.
So these aren't just dusty historical relics or abstract ideas. They're active forces shaping our inner worlds too.
Exactly. Symbols are this powerful ancient language. They seem to bypass our everyday rational filters and speak directly to our emotions, our instincts, our unconscious minds. They connect us to universal ideas, universal energies that go beyond just our individual experience across cultures, across time.
And they are, as we've seen, quite literally everywhere. In nature's forms, the objects we use daily, the rituals we still perform, sometimes without thinking, and in these really sophisticated systems humans created to try and map the spiritual world. It really does change how you look at things once you start noticing them.
It does, doesn't it? It reveals this whole other layer of meaning that's always present but often just overlooked.
So here's a thought maybe to leave you with, something to mull over after this deep dive. How many symbols are you encountering every single day that you just take for granted? You know, the logo on your coffee cup, the design of a building you walk past, the images that pop into your dreams, even the hand gestures people use. How might actively looking for them, reflecting on their potential secret language, how might that change the way you see the world around you? And maybe, just maybe, reveal something surprising about yourself. I'd really encourage you. Start noticing the symbols in your own environment. See what you find.